headed in the right direction. But change happens. I try to keep my balance, but life keeps having a way of throwing me off balance. My perennial question is, how do I put it back together? In the moment, every season of my life, to live an authentic life, one that respects the gifts that I have and uses those gifts for myself and the world. How do I find wholeness again when I'm flat on my face, or worse, on my knees? How do we find wholeness when there's a hole in our hearts? The heart center, the spiritual center of us all, is our dynamic pivot point. It is that love connection that was in the song. The heart center is our love connection. Stuff happening is a perennial process. Life moves, change grows in us, and we become aware at some point, eventually, that we live in the garden of change. We are, and life is, a process of up and down, together and messed up. Here's a 5,000-year-old story, a Hindu story. There was a time when all human beings were gods, but they abused their power. So Brahma, the chief god, decided to take their divinity away and hide it someplace that they would never find it. So Brahma called a council of all the little gods, the little gods, those stories that we tell ourselves. Where should we put it? Should we bury it deep in the earth? Hide it in the ocean? Should we put it on a mountaintop? And all the little gods talked, and they gave up. Those human beings, they will look everywhere. They're just relentless. So Brahma went in meditation and sat with it, and he came up with the idea that we should hide it inside themselves, in their true selves, and they will never find it. So it was agreed. And ever since then, here we are. Going up and down the earth, digging, diving, climbing, exploring, searching for something out there that is really actually right here. Paradoxically, the higher is found when we drop down within to our center. Only it can give us altitude on our lives, can get us back to center, to balance. Holding paradox, whatever you call the higher power, we have all sorts of names for it. Love, spirit, principle, God. It is the only thing that can hold those opposites of a changing world together. The point and the goal is to move ourselves to that deeper level of thinking, to the unified field, or non-dual thinking, where there is no black and white. It's a yes and world. Yes and. We are all improvisational artists, remaking the moment as we are able, with spirit. But with love and spirit, we are infinitely more able to remake the world. Holding opposites, holding both, is where transformation happens. Not just more of the same, those little gods. In the present moment, not living in the past or future, but in the present. Eckhart Tolle says this about the mind. The mind alone is incapable of living in the present, in the now. For one, the moment, the present, is boring. We always think about what next is going to come, what good next thing is going to come. Only spirit, only love, only presence is where we can hold the contradictions together, allowing us to hold them both. So here I have. Imagine a pendulum. There you go, my necklace, Warren. Imagine for a moment the feeling in a recent challenge that you might have had recently. Imagine those feelings as this pendulum moving back and forth. Joy, and sorrow, failure, success, bravery, daring. We need a place to stand. We need the fixed point amid the seeming contradictions. The conscious practice of prayer and meditation, that inner life, is where there is only one thing, where God seems to hold opposites. There's really only, this is John Main, who was a Franciscan meditation teacher. There's really only one mystery, one truth, one suffering, one love, one life, and it is just showing itself in different forms. You and others, old and young, past and future, life and death, grief and love. Grief and love is a pendulum. That is the experience of it. The pendulum is an accurate example of what grief is like. One moment you're fine and coping, and the next moment you're crying in the corner and you cannot. That pivot point is not a mean between the opposites. It is holding both. What is a mean? A mean would be an average. So it's not grief and it's not love. Who wants to live there? No. The holding of opposites is where transformation happens. The seeming paradox that only the higher can do. And that's where the healing happens. This is the one thing we as humans all take up eventually. We take up the journey of putting it back together, of wholeness, of renewal of wholeness. We do this by going deeper into ourselves with conscious practice. Here's Richard Rohr. Everything worthwhile puts together the two things that don't look like they go together at all, but have always been connected at a deeper level. You may be sensing there's a theme here. Unity's fourth principle, prayer and meditation. The fourth principle allows us to understand the first three, that God basically is all there is. God is good, God is within everything, including us, and we co-create with God. So what are we going to do with all that power? We need to go within to hear guidance, to move forward, to heal the contradictions of the world. And then the natural place, the natural result of that is action. But only with the fourth principle moving to the fifth principle can we authentically find out what is ours to do from that inner guidance. Let me switch gears. Let me come at it a different way. Let's take science fiction and two of the greatest science fiction authors, George Orwell and Aldous Huxley. In Richard Rohr's new book, I recommend this book, Dancing While Standing Still, he quotes the author Neil Postman in his book, Amusing Ourselves to Death, Public Discourse in the Age of Show Business. But this gentleman contrasts Huxley's and Orwell's Orwell wrote 1984, and Huxley wrote Brave New World. Here's what he said. Contrary to common belief, even among the educated, Huxley and Orwell did not prophesy the same thing. Orwell warns that we will be overcome by an externally imposed oppression. But Huxley's vision is no big brother is required to deprive people of their autonomy, maturity, and history. As he saw it, people will come to love their oppression, to adore the technologies that undo their very capacity to think. Yeah. Orwell, 1984, feared external oppression. Huxley, Brave New World, feared internal distraction. Books. Orwell thought books would be banned. Huxley believed that no one would want to read. Information. Orwell believed that information would be withheld. Huxley believed that we would have so much information that we would be reduced to passivity and egoism. I know. Truth. Orwell thought that truth would be withheld from us. But Huxley believed that we would be drowning in a sea of information and irrelevance. So Orwell believed that we would have a captive, controlled culture, and Huxley believed that our culture would become trivial, preoccupied with drugs, sex, and technological diversions. So this is Huxley. The civil libertarians and rationalists who are ever alert to oppose tyranny failed to take into account man's almost infinite appetite for distraction. Orwell, people controlled by inflicting pain. Huxley, people controlled by inflicting pleasure. And here we are again with Richard Rohr. The solution is the importance of that inner life. A life grounded in contemplation, a life that searches for hidden wholeness. Meditation and prayer brings wholeness. But there's also a mystery of participation. In the reconciling of opposites, we naturally lead to action, authentic action. What is ours to do? The fourth and the fifth principle of unity, prayer, meditation, and action, are in that order. They are essential and they're linear. This gives us necessary reciprocity. We must take action, we practice, but then we have to teach what we know. And then, when we do, we own it. It's no mystery to the 12-steppers among us, AA, for this very reason. In the 12th step, they teach what they have lived. And to know it better, we must get the lessons in our bones. Even the way shower Jesus had to go apart, pray. He did it for 40 days and 40 nights. He went into the real and the metaphorical wilderness. I've heard the wilderness described as the place where we forget who we are, the wilderness. But here's one of my favorite poets, David Whyte, on withdrawing into contemplation to know what is true and real. This is beautiful. He's amazing. Here it is. We stick to the wrong thing quite often, not because it will come to fruition by further effort, but because we cannot let go of the way we have decided to tell the story. And we become further enmeshed even by trying to make sense of what entraps us, when what is needed is a simple, clean breaking away. To remove ourselves entirely and absolutely, abruptly, and at times uncompromisingly, is often the real and radically courageous break for freedom. Unsticking ourselves from the mythical tar baby, seemingly set up just for us in the middle of our path, we start a process of losing our false enemies, maybe even our false friends, and most especially our false sense of self, which we have manufactured to live with them. Pretty good, huh? We make ourselves available for the simple purification of seeing ourselves and the world more elementally, and therefore more clearly. We withdraw, not to disappear, not to belly gaze, but to find another ground from which to see, a solid ground from which the embodied voice, our life, is suddenly an emphatic statement, one we can recognize as our own, and one from which we now have absolutely lost the wish to withdraw. Ending this talk, I wanted to end with the same question I began with, my perennial question. How do we put it back together again, in the moment, every season of our lives? to live an authentic life, one that respects the gifts that we have and uses those gifts for ourselves and others. If you take one thing away from this talk, it's the importance of your inner life as a rudder of authenticity. What is yours to do? Take a seat. Find a meditation practice that works for you. From our Zen brothers and sisters up the street of silence to the sound meditation on Sunday. Or there are 4 different kinds of meditation, free, demonstrated for you every week at noon. Only 15 minutes, not 40 days and 40 nights, 15 minutes. Do a walking meditation. Walk in nature, surf, swim in nature. Find something a place where you can go within. Find your way to withdraw to that inner space. Pray with a prayer chaplain. Affirmative prayer is not scary, it's beautiful. We hold the high watch for you when you can't. We go deep at your direction to places that trouble you. And we offer you principle as soothing medicine. Consider spiritual direction. It's like couples counseling, where you and God are the couple. What is Spirit saying to you? Emmy, Kelly, and I are starting spiritual direction cohorts in the fall again. For a very reasonable cost, you can have real and true company on your spiritual journey. Take a seat and commit to showing up with others, but for yourself. This is your first action to take, Principle 4 of Unity's 5. Then and only then can you find authentic action, your true north. No one else can say for you. It is not the world's job to validate you on the mountain or in the ocean or in the earth. It's not time's job to be nice. It's time's job to change and to show you what doesn't change. But your inner life, if you attend, will be good and true and loving. Charles Fillmore says this: to feel after God, to feel after God. Attend to your inner life. Come back refreshed, reoriented, restored, and renewed. Put away the books that tell you what to do and be the book within.